anything bigger, even though they obviously come bigger? What's the smallest pack you think someone could get away with?
So if we're doing something like the NPT, in my opinion, just is the way that I pack, unless you're going to be going into a gear shop with a lot of cash in your pocket and having them set you up with the newest and the best and the brightest of every little thing that packs down to the most compact possible area, I think that the average person should probably be looking at something in the range of 50 to 65 liters. Okay. 65, obviously, if you're a bigger person, it helps because, let's face it, everything that you and I have, it takes up more space,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like my wife, for example, who is 5'0", 100 and very little pounds, all of her shirts and pants are like half the size of mine. So, that's,
Totally.
She can get away with packing half as much as me. But for us, I mean, 50 liters is perfect for me. I could do, if I pack correctly and I'm, frugal with my space and not making myself completely suffer out there, I could definitely get away with probably a week and a half, 2 weeks with a 50-liter pack. That's not too much of an issue. But it also depends on the bear canister situation. I actually use an external bear carrier for my pack,
mm-hmm. which,
a lot of people are like, well, why would you do that? It's kind of sort of redundant. The thing is like, first of all, so you hike with it during the day, but if you are going to use the base camp method and you want to stash it, it's much easier just to unclip this pack that sits perfectly up against your backpack or on top or however you have it situated. Either go hang it or just stash the whole bag with your bear canister and everything already in it. And plus it also keeps from accidents happening inside the backpack. Something spills or leaks, you don't want that going anywhere in there, mm-hmm. Depending on the bear canister you have, because some of them are not waterproof. And it just saves a lot of space that could be used for more valuable things, in my opinion.
Sure. No, absolutely. Agreed 100%. Cool. Well, yeah, that's a great talk about backpacks. So now moving more towards camping, we're getting later into the night now. So sleeping bags. So I have an assortment of sleeping bags for different uses. But what I brought on this trip was a 20-degree bag, EMS mummy bag. I don't remember off the top of my head actually what the exact model is. Not super expensive, synthetic bag. I was pleased with it. It was a little on the heavier side. I think it was like 4 pounds. Maybe it was, I think it was like around that 4 pound mark. I have a 0-degree bag. And again, I was doing a lot of, the temperatures were, the lows were 20 degrees. So it was a little chilly while I was out there. But the 20-degree bag on, when it's 50 degrees outside is incredible. And when it was 20 degrees and I was super layered up, it worked fine. I was never cold. I was fine. My 0-degree sleeping bag would have been toasty, but again, that weighs, I have an extra large 0-degree bag, which is more for comfort and warmth when I'm on the road for work, sleeping in my converted van. So I did not want to bring that on the trail. Didn't feel necessary. But yeah, I used a 20-degree synthetic EMS bag. Very happy with it. You could probably get away with something much warmer in the summertime here as we're moving into the summer in the Adirondacks. But yeah, that's what I have. What about yourself?
So I use a sleep system. So it really depends on the condition. So primarily what I use is I actually use, as you probably would have predicted, an Army issue ECWS sleep system. Right, it's the extreme cold weather system. It breaks down into several different components. So I'm not talking about the stuff that you pick up for like $150 or $200 at your local Army Navy store, because those are knockoffs. They're not the real thing. It's a different type of material. It's a different type of bivvy that comes with it. It's not what you would be getting if you were actually in a unit. So mine starts with a patrol bag. So that weighs, I believe, I want to say 2.4 pounds, maybe it might be 2.2 pounds without the stuff sack, not using the stuff sack. And with that, I add what we call the whoopee. So that's an Army issue poncho liner. It weighs like nothing. So it's like one of those really lightweight puffy jackets, like the synthetic fill. Just picture that in like I don't know the dimensions of it, like a 4x5 blanket.
Mm-hmm.
So it weighs like nothing at all. And I just stuff it down inside my sleeping bag and wrap myself up in that. And it gives me like an extra 15 degrees of tolerance inside the sleeping bag. So I've got my patrol bag, which is, I believe, rated down to bearability at 30 degrees. Add the Woobit to that. So now I'm bringing myself down to survivable at 20 degrees, much more comfortable at 20 to 30 degrees.
Sure.
If it's really cold out, there's an outer layer. It's a big, thick portion of it that I think the entire system with that added is supposed to go down to negative 30. I don't backpack with that. In my opinion, is if the weather's cold enough where I need to use something like that, then I'm probably not interested in backpacking.
Same.
I know
dude,
a lot of
I'm
you folks out there,
home, man.
right? A lot of you folks out there love to backpack and that stuff. I'm kind of over it. I'm too old for that stuff now. I prefer to stay home and hang out with my dogs and my feet up by the fire. I'll let you guys have all the trails to yourselves.
Yes, I will be right there with you as well.
But I also use a Gore-Tex bivy sack sometimes too. So if I'm going somewhere and I'm counting on using a lean-to, but in case the lean-to is not available or some plan changes, it's something that either bag will actually zip and snap right into. So it's basically an outer shell. It's triple layer Gore-Tex. And I've got a very, very small, just kind of a sheet of mosquito netting that literally weighs a couple grams that I just kind of throw over the head portion, and I can comfortably sleep pretty much anywhere with that when I combine it with my ground pad.
Cool. Yeah, so there's a lot of different options. And a buddy of mine, Paul, he does the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. A shout out to him. You should check it out. He's a big quilt guy. Never used a sleeping bag. He hiked the whole AT. He's a big quilt
quilts
guy.
Are great.
So, if you don't like that being in a sleeping bag thing, the quilts are worth looking into. And again, temperatures obviously matter, and as well as the pads that you have underneath you to have a little bit of insulation. But that's another option that you can go with. And honestly, if I was going in the summertime backpacking, I probably would go quilt too. I'd probably check out the various options that exist out there for that, but it's another option instead of the sleeping bag. And again, I'm sure many of you know, and this is probably redundant, but a 20-degree bag doesn't mean you can be in shorts and a t-shirt inside your 20-degree bag when it's 20 degrees outside. You still need to be layered up. And
hence the term survivability, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's your survivability or bearability rating.
Yeah, totally. So keep that in mind. I don't want to be responsible for somebody who went out at 20 degrees and thought that would be plenty without the proper, and when I say proper layers, I mean like tons of layers on as well. Yeah. But cool. So continue. Go.
So I'm glad you brought up the quilt thing. I almost forgot about that. I'd be completely remiss if we didn't talk about that, because that's the direction that sleeping gear is going right now. They're extremely versatile. There are as many variations in quilts as there are in sleeping bags now. They can be used in different ways. There's some that have like picture a sneaker, like with a removable tongue section to it. There's some that have integrated parkas. So basically you're climbing into what's almost like an ultra lightweight summit suit, but the legs are a sleeping bag and the top is a jacket. There's a lot of different directions you're taking the quilt trend in, and I think it's awesome. I'm not there myself yet, simply because I don't really have a reason to go drop a bunch of money on a new piece of kit right now. But that's they really are the direction that things are going to. And something you have to keep in mind, though, if you're going to be using something like that, where it's not really completely sealing you off from the elements in the same way that a seam tape mummy bag would, is you have to combine it with the right sleeping pad. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, sure. And that'll transition us right into sleeping pads. However, if you don't want to go quilt and you don't want to go sleeping bag, you can just get a Snuggie, and that will be perfect too while you're out on the trail. You'll be comfortable, you'll be cozy, you'll look great, you'll be the envy of everybody at the campsite, and you can get it in leopard print. So obviously the Snuggie would be the real way to go. Sure. Yep. So sleeping pads. So I brought a Thermarest Z pad, which weighs nothing. Everyone, you've all seen them. They kind of fold up like an accordion. A Thermarest Z pad, and then I also had a blow-up pad that went on top of that. That was an Ecotech Outdoors Highburn pad. Just got it on Amazon. Nothing special. It weighs 24 ounces. They call it an ultralight pad, but it's 24 ounces. It was a 4 seasons, and it's insulated, so I needed that option. So as I mentioned again, I weigh 230 pounds. So the Thermarest pad and this Ecotech pad, I slept great. And I sleep great when I'm on those. I'm also a low maintenance sleeper. I can go to sleep on a hardwood floor with a pillow and be just fine. Probably my years of touring in a band kind of set me up for that sort of lifestyle, being able to sleep anywhere. But I found myself very comfortable with that setup. So the Thermarest pad, and then on top the Ecotech pad. Yeah, that little double situation was terrific in my opinion. And it kept me very warm. I was never cold from the bottom, even on those cold nights.
Yeah, that's a really great strategy too, because by combining the inflatable pad with the closed cell, closed high density foam, basically what you're doing is you're creating like several more R value to your sleeping pad
Yep.
normally would have been. I like it. That's something I've never tried myself, is just doubling up my pads. I use a XPED SynMat 7, which I don't actually recommend to people. And I'm going to tell you that right away. There are a couple problems with it. First of all, it's supposed to be a self-inflating pad. It doesn't self-inflate very well at all. You actually have to store it a certain way in order for the self-inflating mechanism to work when you actually get on the trail. So it's got to be either spread out or like draped, like no more than one fold, like over a hanger or something like that, with all the valves open when you're not using it. And then when you go to actually pack it up and get it on the trail and go to use it wherever you're going to, it'll work correctly. Now, me, like a lot of people, I clean and air out my stuff when I get home. Then I pack everything back up into its little, individual storage spaces. Because I've done that through a few seasons now, the self-inflating portion of it no longer works. So if you happen to work for XPED or know anyone that does, please let them know that that's something that could definitely be improved. The pros of that pad is, even though the self-inflating portion of it doesn't work, it does come with an integrated hand pump, which weighs nothing at all. It doesn't actually add any weight. It's just part of the existing valve system, and it's got it's funny because it's actually got handprints on the bag where you pump with one hand and then the other, and the way that it operates the valve when you do that, it draws air into the pack and doesn't let it, or the bag, and it doesn't let it escape. So it's a very unique hand pump system. If you're frustrated and you're in a hurry, you don't want to take 3 minutes basically doing push-ups on top of your pad. You can just put your mouth over the valve and blow into it. I don't recommend that people do that with insulated sleeping pads though, because what it does is it causes condensation and bacteria from your mouth to build up in the pads, and while you might not smell it or see it, it completely destroys the insulation for sleeping pads. So
fascinating, interesting.
Yep. So that's a very good. Yeah, that's a very good hot tip for you right there. Insulated pads, don't blow them up orally, otherwise they're going to be the insulation portion of it will be useless after like a couple of seasons.
Sure, but at the same time, I mean, these pads. I mean, the pads, I don't think pads are that expensive, and especially depending how often you're using it. I feel like if you got to buy a new one, you got to buy a new one. Mine was not expensive, and my buddy who did 6 months on the AT had a $30 pad that lasted the whole time, 6 months they were out there. So I feel like if you spend that sort of money, $30, $40, and it goes bad quickly, you could just get a new one.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Where mine was about $200.
Oh, geez, no wonder.
And it's got an R value pretty close to 6.
Okay, sure.
Which is pretty good, and it also collapses down to about the size of a beer can, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot smaller than mine. That's for sure.
One of the reasons I originally went with it though is for the R value, because I don't want to carry a heavier sleeping bag, so I'd rather make up for it with another piece of equipment that I may or may not even bring with me, depending on where I'm staying. And the other thing too is a lot of sleeping pads nowadays, you can get them where they're super ultra lightweight, right? Like we're talking 0.8, 0.9 of a pound. They weigh like nothing. They take up almost no space at all. Like they're not taking up that much more space than like a super lightweight rainfly, like a windbreaker type jacket would in your pack. The downside of those sleeping pads, which is something that drives me insane, is it's like sleeping on a grocery bag. They just make like wispy crinkling noises all night. Anytime depending on how big you are and how you sleep, even when you inhale and exhale, you can hear the bag crinkling underneath you. I can't do that, so that's why I went with a slightly heavier duty pad, where I can slide around on it if I want to. But the thing is like super silent; it doesn't make any noise. And like I said, it still folds up to about the size of a beer can. which is great. It's